Hello, I just wanted to show you a few more tips on this week's exercise, just a couple things that might help you out. First, we talked about the woman and selecting her and using a smart object. So I'm going to grab the quick selection tool and do a quick bad selection of this just to demonstrate the smart object a little bit. And I'm going to click on the layer, add a mask, to add the layer mask. And you can see I did a pretty poor job of the layer mask selection here. I'm going to right click this and convert to smart object. So we did that before, except this time we copied this and pasted it into the other document. What I would like to do is actually take the smart object itself over to the other document. So one pretty easy way to do this is to right click on the layer, and we're going to duplicate this layer. Now normally when you do this, it'll just create another layer in this file, but we're going to make one change. There's a destination here, and we can change this to our other image. Let's see, background or banner photo. And I got a color warning here, but I'm just gonna go through that and hit OK for that. So now if I go over to my banner photo here, we can see that this girl photo is now in here, except now it is a smart object. And I like this a little bit better because before, if we wanted to make any changes to how we masked it or that kind of thing, we'd have to open up the other file and get into that smart object. I like having the smart object in this document. So now we can see that this is kind of a problem here. So we can, first let me actually flip that. Edit, transform, and I'm going to flip horizontal. And you'll see though when I go into the smart object, I'm just going to double click on that and hit OK. It actually has the original image. It's not flipped over here. So let's actually just disable this layer mask and start over. So I'm going to right click on this and, well actually instead of disable, I'm just going to delete that mask. And now we have our original and we can do what we like. So I'm going to grab the quick selection tool again. And I have a pretty big brush and I'm just going to kind of do this quickly. I'm not going to worry about these fuzzies up here or even these fuzzies over here too much. And really, I kind of, actually for my photo, I want a nice clean mask instead of, sometimes you want to get a lot of these hair details and sometimes you don't. It really depends. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to apply the layer mask. And you can see we got some blue over here. We'll deal with that and a little bit of edges here. We're going to use that refine edge. So actually I should have done that first. So I'll undo the mask. We have our selection and then we'll refine edge. We'll do our layer mask from this dialog. So we'll hit the smart radius and we'll crank that up and we should see most of our problems kind of going away there. We'll hit decontaminate because there's some blue showing around the outside. And we'll turn that up a little bit. And it's not perfect, but we're a lot closer here. So we'll kind of go with this for now. And we still have this blue down here, but I'm still going to leave that alone because I want to show you a different trick with that. So we're going to do a new layer with a layer mask. Yes, that'll work. And hit OK. Actually, I now have 2 copies of this now. I guess I didn't need to do a new layer necessarily, so I'll just delete the old one because we have everything we need right here. And so now we have this. We got a little blue up here, and we have a little blue down here that we want to deal with. In the other tutorial, we actually grabbed the eraser and just erase that away. Well, I don't like the eraser because if you erase something, save the file or save the smart object, then it's pretty much gone forever. You can't do anything about that. And for the most part, we won't, if that's gone forever, that's fine. But you never know. You might change your mind. You might want something back. Using the eraser is destructive. So let's try something that gives us options in the future. That's always kind of ideal if we can do that. So we have a layer mask here, and we didn't really cover a whole lot about how that works, but if you look carefully at it, you can see the area that we see here is white, and the area that's masked out that we can't see is black. So instead of using the eraser, what you can actually do is, I zoomed in a little bit here, I'm going to pick a brush, like a paintbrush, and I'm going to resize the brush size. You can do this by the left or right brackets on your keyboard, which is above your enter key, just the square brackets. You can change the size. So I'm going to get a size that's kind of around this size. And what I want to do is black erases and white lets you see it. So I'm actually going to make my main color here black by just hitting this double arrow to flip them. And then I can just seemingly erase that, where I'm actually just masking that out. What's nice though is if there's different parts of the image, like maybe I got a little too much blue up here, I can kind of erase that away. I got a little blue over here. Let's say maybe I went too far with it. I didn't want to erase that. All you have to do is to add it back is, if you look on here, white lets you see it. So we'll flip it back to white, and you can actually paint what you erased back. So if you decide you want that blue back, that's fine. I'll just undo that because I do want to get rid of it. But see how you can kind of go back and forth between what you see and what you don't see by just painting black or white. And you have to make sure that you have this mask selected. If you have the image itself selected, if you paint, you're just painting black on the image. So make sure that that little thumbnail, that's the mask itself, is selected. So now we have this pretty much how I want it. And I'm still inside the smart object. I can just I can just close that. It'll ask me to save it. And when we kick back here, it will have what I want. Another great thing about the smart object as well is if you transform it, because it's a smart object, you can actually transform it as many times as you want, and that original graphics that's in there aren't going to get messed up at all. Now, on the flip side, if I took this other image, and you could try this yourself, scale it down really low and hit enter, and that made a really small image, then scale it back up, it'll look messed up because it's kind of permanently scaled it to that new position. But if you use a layer mask, or a smart object rather, you can scale that as many times as you want whenever you want, and that's kind of a nice feature. A couple other quick things. We saw how we could adjust our images. So I'm on the background layer now. We could go to Image, Adjust, and we did Hue Saturation, but there's other ones, you know, Vibrance, you can make something black and white, that kind of thing. Let me show you one other way that's a little bit more flexible. We have something called Adjustment Layers, where you have the same types of adjustments, except it's in a layer form. So if you look, there's a panel called Adjustments, and if you don't see that, you can go to Window, Adjustments. And if you roll over these icons, you see brightness, contrast, levels, curves, all these different adjustments. I'm going to hit Hue Saturation, and now up in this Properties panel, we have our Hue Saturation panel. So now, let's say we may want to just do something crazy with this. We'll make it dark and really saturated, or maybe lighter, that kind of thing. You can do all your adjustments here, and you notice that there's now a layer here on top of your background. And this layer now gives those adjustments to everything below it. You have to be a little careful with that because sometimes you might have other layers. Like if this was at the top, notice it'll affect the whole image, all these different layers. Kind of like we did with the clipping mask, if you want to tie it to just the one layer below it, hold your Alt or Option on your Mac and see that little double or that little icon pop up when you're in between the layers. You click that, and now that you see that little arrow, that ties it just to the background layer. So if it's not the layer on the bottom, like let's say we did an adjustment to this inset, actually we can do that. Why don't we do contrast, brightness contrast. I can change the contrast See how it's changing everything? Well, if I hold the Alt or Option key in between the layers, click that, now it's only tied to that inset image there. So one final thing, we also saw how that we could take an image and put a stroke around it by going up to the edit menu, adding a stroke. Well, I want to show you a way that you can also, that's kind of a destructive addition, because once you put it on there, it's kind of permanent. So I want to show you how to do this where you can add it and change it later if you want to change your mind. So in this case, we actually need to apply it to the clipping mask. Sorry, so I'm going to select the clipping mask because that's going to be the actual object that we want to apply the stroke around. The trick to it is this. You can actually, we did the drop shadow where we added a drop shadow, but we're going to use that similar dialog. You can either click on effects down here, or you can double click on that layer, which is what I usually do. And now you have, this is where your drop shadow was before. There's actually one called stroke, and you can see that pop up immediately. I want to adjust that, so I'm going to click on stroke here. We can change the color to be a white stroke, and then you can change the size to something a little more appropriate. Another thing you can do is we apply the stroke to the background here, and we'll do that as well. Also, so you'll notice, you'll see the effects down here with the stroke. You can turn those effects off and on. You can turn your stroke off and on. You could actually double click that, and you could do a stroke and a drop shadow and have some combination of that. Let me adjust my angle there and then kind of tweak the size and distance a little bit. So you can have combinations of these styles, which are layer styles, which are nice. But let me do the background here just to show you one other method here. So double click the background. We have, where is it? Stroke. Click on, make sure you click on that as well. You'll notice you don't see it. That's because by default the position puts it to the outside of that graphic. So instead of that, I'm going to have it go to the inside of that graphic. So now we see it. I can change the color to white, and you can make that size however you want as well. Although we have to be careful, our woman layer was overlapping that stroke a little bit, so we can adjust that. Her head's a little bit cut off here too, so this could use some adjustment. But I mainly wanted to show you these few things. So give adjustment layers a try if you get a chance, or try bringing a smart object in, because you can always go back and make adjustments there. We also have the stroke that you can apply as a layer style similar to drop shadow if you want to give that a go.